Ladies and gentlemen, this is El Cochino, Tom Lawler, and I'd like to welcome you to the podcast that puts the lotion on its own skin, LuchaWorld. Bitchin'.
Welcome everyone to LuchaWorld Podcast, episode number 109. Fredo Esparza here, and this week we're going to recap CMLL's May 31st show, which was the first big event that they had since announcing that every month they were going to have a big event. Of course, this being Juicio Final. I think everybody had low expectations as far as big shows go for this one because it really didn't have anything that was that attractive, I would say, a week prior to them announcing it, or maybe like 10 days prior to them announcing the lineup. But then suddenly they added a seventh match to the show. Actually, the first thing they did was, as I said previously, they removed Virus from a trios match, the opening match. And while this was going on, Virus and Metalico started feuding on the Sunday shows in some Relevos Increíbles matches. And so CMLL had decided that they couldn't have Virus on Juicio Final because they were not sure if he would be retired by that point. So everyone assumed that the show would be happening, that match would be happening on the Sunday prior to the Friday show, as the big match for the that weekend Sunday, that Sunday. They basically, CML in the past couple of weeks started a new airing on a new network in Mexico, and they basically got the Sunday show. I think there's another channel that also gets the Sunday show, a couple of matches from the show. It's pretty much the same, what you get from every single CMLL show, TV show. That's basically what this one is as well. So everyone just assumed that it was going to happen the Sunday prior to the Juicio Final show. That lineup was released, and Virus versus Metalico wasn't added to it. It was actually added to the Juicio Final show as the third match on the card, and it was indeed the loser must retire stipulation added to the match. Virus had actually asked for it. He said it during a heat of the moment. He didn't expect it to be added by CMLL. He was surprised that it did. That's one of those things where I think the build up to the match was well done because they both kind of seemed like they didn't think that this was going to end up being a retirement match. It's possible that one of them knew or both of them knew, and they were just really good at playing the roles of being surprised, especially Virus, because he didn't think that CML was going to go through with it. In several interviews that he was talking about how he didn't think that was going to happen. He was okay with it just being a hair match, but they ended up accepting and agreeing to the stipulation, and it ended up being the third match on the show. And it ended up being a match of the year candidate. I think it might have been it might be the CML match of the year so far. Honestly, I mean, there's been a few other good CML matches. Carbonario's been in a few of them, so but this has to be one, just on emotion. This probably has to be up there. We'll get to that match a little bit more later, but we should just run down through the entire card. The opening match was Blue Panther Jr. and Reiko Meta beating Disturbio, who replaced Virus in this match, Kawato-san and Misterioso Jr. This was really kind of like where you kind of see the drop-off in CML's roster with their Rudos, because Kawato-san, I mean, I'm surprised he was in this. But, it turned out to be a pretty good opener. I mean, probably one of the better openers of the year. There's been better openers on previous shows, I think, in my opinion. But this one was a good opener. I thought Reiko Meta and Disturbio were really good. Disturbio had a Sherbert-looking hairstyle going. He dyed his hair like green, orange, I think red, a bunch of different colors. So it kind of looked like if you got a snow cone and you had it, or a rainbow sherbet. But he still performed really, really well. Everybody else did pretty well in this as well, but I think Reiko Meta and Disturbio were the most impressive. Kawato-san probably hit one of the better dives in this. He hit a corner. He did a corner dive, and I thought that was, first of all, he did it well, and he was actually not a problem in this match. So that kind of told you, as soon as you saw that he wasn't going to be an issue, that this match was going to turn out to be pretty good. Same thing with Blue Panther Jr. Both those guys can be up and down as far as their performances, but I thought they held their own, and the match overall was a really good way to open the show. Crowd kind of seemed a little into it, more than usual for the opening matches. The Rudos ended up getting DQ'd because Kawato unmasked Black Panther. But I thought this was actually a really good 2 falls opening match. The second match was Ángel de Oro, Niebla Roja, and Sobrano Jr. beating Mephisto, Hefesto, and Luciferno, Los Hijos del Infierno. The Chavez brothers and Sobrano Jr. have become like the secondary technical trio behind whatever form of Sky Team there is, that features either Volador Jr., Valiente, Caristico, or Mystico, and sometimes Dragon Lee, depending on what week it is or who's available. But the Chavez brothers, Sobrano Jr. have become like the secondary group. Then the third group would probably be the Guanato style group and anybody who's teaming with Atlantis. But this was actually, I thought this match was good, but not as good as the opener. I thought the technicals were really solid, did really well. Soberano Jr. looked really good in this match. I just think the Hijos del Infierno are a little slower. They're not as... They don't really go outside of their comfort zone, so they kind of just stick to the same stuff that they're going to do every single time. You could pretty much call every spot that they're going to do in a match. But I thought it was still a good enough match. I think that's one of the things you get with trios matches in CML, that if it's a good match, it's probably something you've already seen. And every once in a while, they'll do something that is a little bit over the top, a little bit above replacement level, more, I guess you could say, about when it comes to like when it's actually an improvement of a trios match. But I thought this was good. After that, the third match was the retirement match. Loser must retire. Virus beating Metalico in a hell of a match. I think this is definitely a match of the year candidate. Really great old school style match. This was something that you don't really get often in Lucha Libre, especially in CML, because CML tends to stick to the same type of formula, even for the big matches, the quick first 2 falls that don't mean anything, and then the big third fall that actually means a lot and ends up making or breaking the match. And but this time I thought the entire match itself was really good. Both these guys brought a lot of energy, a lot of fire to the match. Metalico was looking like he was trying to, keep his career going. Virus had the early match. He had the advantage early on, and I think at that point when Virus had the advantage, there was a part of me that kind of was worried that he was going to be the one that was going to lose. That's the other thing. I think nobody really knew who was going to lose or why this even came up. For all we knew, maybe Virus, and both the guys are like young guys. They're 40-year-old. They're in their 40s, and so they're kind of guys that are, at that point in their careers. A lot of guys who maybe aren't big stars kind of start thinking about, going into something else as far as a career goes, or maybe they just don't. They're just kind of tired of the bumps and bruises of wrestling, and they get they do more behind the scenes stuff. So there was actually that, especially because Virus is a trainer, and Metalico's talked about his son and how he's been training him and a couple of other guys. So you kind of know a little bit about that. And then there was also that there was a belief among some fans that maybe Metalico might be moving on and becoming a referee. So there was a lot of possibilities, a lot of stuff that was being talked about throughout the week. But I thought this match was really good. They threw some really good punches in the match throughout. Just a really fun match. Virus busted out all his submission holds. Metalico went back to his Tigre Metalico days and did a couple of dives. One of the topes he did, he actually landed short in the tope, and actually you could hear his shoulder landing on the floor, on the outside floor. So it looked painful. So that kind of added to the intrigue to the finish, because he was really selling that a lot. And then the closing minutes were fantastic. With first of all, a lot of this it went about 20 minutes, and there were some people who were kind of expecting this to be even shorter. If it lasted 10 minutes, we would have been shocked. It ended up going 20 minutes, and it was well worth the 20 minutes. It was really an excellent match. They had a segment where both the guys were just really winded and breaking, kind of tired, and they were selling that as part of the match. And you'd get a couple of near falls, and then you ended up the final couple of minutes. You end up getting Virus just going for every possible move he could come up with to end Metalico. I think there were a few times where he couldn't get the pin, and you kind of thought maybe it's possible Metalico would end up winning, and it ended up not happening. Virus ended up winning with La Motocicleta. Really good match. I highly recommend people watch this match. I mean, if you don't want to watch the rest of the show, you just watch this match. Excellent. At the end of it, the crowd, actually during the match also, the crowd was really into the match. Very early on, they were rooting for Virus. Then mid-match, you started hearing a few people chanting for Metalico, but it was mostly a pro-Virus crowd. Probably the loudest I've heard an Arena Mexico crowd cheer for someone other than Nero Casas. I think Virus is the only one that they've actually cheered that loudly for, besides Nero Casas. And, I thought that added to the match. It made it so much better. The other thing that Virus the last couple of weeks, he's been coming out to Here Comes the Hot Stepper. And, honestly, when you switch to that type of music, you can't retire from wrestling if you're just adding that. I just thought it was a phenomenal match. The post-match, money was thrown in. Both guys were very thankful to the fans. You had Virus kind of congratulating Metalico for his career. Metalico was very emotional, crying. Post-match interviews, Metalico cried in his interviews. Virus was talking about how he kind of felt bad that he had ended somebody's career, and he said afterwards that he never wanted to have another retirement match again. I made the comment that I thought maybe he should do more, because there's a lot of CMLL guys that we could use that could use some retiring in the near future, far more than Metalico. I thought Metalico had a great performance. I think he redeemed himself also, because he had when he lost his mask to Oro Jr., it was a really horrible match. And so I kind of thought that having this type of match, this type of performance versus Virus, if this is the way you're going to go, I think it's the best way to go. People are going to remember you more because of that, and not so much about the loss to Oro Jr. Metalico, I think, the one thing that came out of the whole mask loss was that he everybody realized that he looked like Pedro Infante, and it gave him a new character, and he really played that off. He did the whole dance, the karaoke stuff, everything he could do with the whole Pedro Infante stuff. The other thing he did was he was really good on interviews. I think he had a ton of charisma. I mean, he's probably one of the guys that I would have least wanted to retire if you were going to ask me to rebuild the CMLL roster. I don't think Metalico would be on top of the list. I think he's had those moments where in trios matches, he's looked very ordinary, just because he's in matches teaming up with Cancerbero, Raciel, Espanto Jr., Signo. They're just wrestling the same guys over and over again. So you kind of get this match that isn't that fun, but he was always very entertaining as far as a character. And I think CML kind of never did more with him beyond that. But there are so many guys, he's not high on the list of guys that CML hasn't done anything with, but he's in that group. And so I thought this was a very good way for him to go out. You kind of wish he could continue on as a wrestler, but I think this is really the right thing to do. Especially, I think he's already at that age where maybe if he doesn't retire, we're just going to be talking about how we're going to start getting bored with him. Or, I know that there were a lot of people who had said they had never seen Metalico prior to this match. And so, for those fans, I think they kind of were hoping they could see more. Unfortunately, for those of us who have watched a lot of Metalico matches, we kind of realize that, maybe this was the best for him as far as his career goes. There's so many guys in wrestling that stick around for too long, and, they kind of wear out their welcome as far as being popular with the fans or being liked. And so I thought this was the best way for him to go. Virus, I think there was maybe a couple months ago where people were wondering if Virus was even still good on the good side of things, just because he really never had any type of matches. And when he would have a match, he would kind of mail them in sometimes. He was getting to that point just because, you do so many of the same matches over and over again that you kind of just start, your performances start to start to slip. And I think this kind of proves that he still has something in him, and he's still an excellent wrestler. I wish they would do more with him in CMLL, but then again, there's about 30 or 40 guys that I always say that about every single week when it comes to CMLL. One of them was actually on the commentary team for the Televisa show, that being Hechicero. So, that I thought this was, like I said, this was a great match. My one biggest disappointment in this whole thing about Metalico retiring is that I looked up right after this match. I looked up on the Lucha database, and I found that Metalico and Fuego never had a match against each other, as far in a singles match. They never had a singles match, and I always wondered, what if Metalico and Fuego had a singles match, had a dance-off, and it never happened. Very unfortunate. That's probably the biggest unfortunate thing out of this whole Metalico retirement situation. But like I said, I thought it was a fantastic match of the year candidate. Right after the match, they actually had a dance segment for the Diosas del Ring, and I think that might have helped, because I think if they would have started the women's match immediately after the retirement match, it might have not had the same reaction, because the crowd was really, like I said, really into the retirement match. And I think that having that break in between the matches really helped the women's match, because I think the crowd was far more into it. They were cheering more for Amapola because they were pro Mexico, and I think later on a few people started more cheering Kaho Kobayashi, but they were more rooting for Amapola. But Amapola beat Kaho Kobayashi in a hair match. I thought it was a good match. Amapola still showed that she still has something in her as far as being a performer. Unfortunately, we don't get to see that often because she's in a lot. CML does so many trios matches, and unfortunately, like I said on Lucha Talk, and I've said on other shows when I've talked about women's wrestling, they basically work the same formula as far as the trios, tag, singles matches for women. It's almost the same thing except for the stipulation matches. The stipulation matches, they add a little more extra to it, and I thought that's what helped this match. Kaho Kobayashi, she went back to Japan, I think, that weekend or the few days after the show, so I was very disappointed to find that out, because she is by far and away the best female wrestler in CMLL at this point, and not having her there is going to be a very, worst case, you just don't watch the women's matches. But, I actually think she did a really phenomenal job in this match. She's a lot smaller than Amapola, so I think that also helped as far as Amapola being more of a base for her. And although the one time Kaho Kobayashi had to be the base for Amapola hit a tope con hiro to the outside through the middle rope, and she nearly killed, she pancaked poor Kaho Kobayashi, she must have been she was able to survive that and continued on. I thought this was a really good match. Amapola pulled it off. I think this was one of those hair matches where you don't know what the result was going to be, just because, and I think that added to the match, just because both women, I thought, had the possibility of losing their hair. Normally when you see a woman's hair match, you kind of know which one is going to be a little more willing to do it. Like when Estrellita wrestled Amapola, you pretty much knew Estrellita was going to do the hair. She wasn't going to drop her hair. And there's been others. I think there's a few times where there's a surprise, like the time Diana La Cazadora dropped her hair. I think that one was a really big surprise, just because she actually had a TV job in Monterrey when she dropped her hair. And that added even more of a surprise element to that finish. But this one, I think both the women, Kaho's a big fan of lucha, and she understood that this was something that you do when you go to Mexico, especially like if you're gonna go there and then leave for a while. And so I thought kudos to Kaho for actually getting her entire head shaved in the ring, unlike some wrestlers who just get a partial haircut, and then some of them get the rest of their hair shaved backstage, while others totally don't get their heads shaved. They just get a short haircut. I'm talking about Fabi Apache, of course, but Kaho, she shaved her head. One of the worst things about this was when they did post-match interviews, they didn't have Okumura available to translate for Kaho. So basically, she did the interviews in Japanese, and maybe she answered a little bit in English, but she wasn't really up for speaking in Spanish. So And then they had Kawado-san. I guess Kawado-san translated for her in English, but they did not speak in Spanish, so that kind of, you didn't really know what she was saying or anything. Amapola did put her over big time afterwards, and she said she was one of the better wrestlers she's wrestled in her career. So I thought that was, like I said, that was a good match. I think the first half of this show, if you go from match 1 through 4, was really strong, and I think that's when we kind of all figured out that maybe like the rest of the show wasn't going to be that great. But I think that just having those first 4 matches was enough to like make this a thumbs up for me, just because I thought it was a really good show from that at that point. Unfortunately, it started to dip after that. The 5th match was Euforia and Gran Guerrero beating Diamante Azul and Valiente to win the CMLL World Tag Team titles. I think the positive in this match was that we have new tag team champions, and it's Euforia and Gran Guerrero, who are far better workers, and I think this gives you the option of having better tag teams compete and challenge for those belts, like the Chavez brothers, like Dragon Lee and Mystico, maybe some other tag team. I think it would be kind of cool if they actually did the Dinastias, the winner of the Dinastias tournament, if it's not either Euforia or Gran Guerrero earning a shot to those tag team titles. I think that would be kind of cool. They're also feuding with the Dinamitas, so there's a lot more possible tag teams to challenge for that those belts. And also it gets the belt off of Diamante Azul, who's a horrible wrestler, horrible person too, just from the past experiences. From watching him do some dumb things in the ring. He showed up in this match, and he looked like he was pouting. There were points where he kind of didn't really want to do certain things. And, the highlight of this match was really when the Guerreros tossed Valiente into Diamante Azul for the win. But they kind of like lawn darted him into Diamante Azul. And that spot looks really, really dangerous. But I think a lot of people just took delight on it being Diamante Azul who was going to be the one taking the brunt of that. The Guerreros tried, and Valiente tried, but it wasn't. I just thought the tag match was just more of a, let's get the belts to these new guys, let's get the belts off of these guys and give them to these guys and move on. And that's kind of what this match felt like. I thought it was just an average match, nothing more to it. The 6th match was Caristico, Mystico, Volador Jr. beating La Peste Negra, Barbaro Carbonario, Mr. Niebla, and Negro Casas. I thought this was a good match. But like I said, with the second match on this show, I just thought it was pretty much your typical good CML trios match featuring these type of these teams. Something you see almost every Friday. Nothing really different. I thought Carbonario looked solid in this. There wasn't any more build up to Carbonario Mystico. It kind of seemed like it's become a forgotten thing. I thought, like I said, Mr. Niebla showed up and he actually did some stuff. He wasn't clowning around, and he wasn't, he actually was in his best behavior for this match. And then you also got the Que Monito, Zacharias spot in the match. So, they basically just gave you that fun match to get the crowd in, keep the crowd interested. And something that you just enjoy as far as the semi-main event goes. The main event, the 7th match, Ultimo Guerrero beat Máscara Año 2000 in a hair match. And this match was kept very short. I think it lasted about 10 minutes. And even when it lasted 10 minutes, basically they had 2 seconds. They each had their second. Ultimo Guerrero brought in his brother Gran Guerrero. And Máscara Año 2000, he had Disturbio as his second, which was really weird because there's a lot of Dinamitas available to be his second. So that was kind of like something that we kind of were hinting to the possibility that there was going to be something going on, some shenanigans were going to go on. And sure enough, during the match, I think Disturbio did more of the work than Mascareno 2000. He was taking more bumps and getting involved more in the match, trying to help him beat Ultimo Guerrero. Closing minutes of the match. And, typical of these matches, very short first 2 falls. And of course, the 3rd fall was also pretty short. But what they did was they basically had the Dinamitas. This time it was 5 of them. Sansón, Cuatrero, Forastero, Universo 2000 Jr., and Máscara Año 2000 Jr. all ran out to try to help their uncle. And what ended up happening? Security rushed in to stop them. And while this was going on, Ultimo Guerrero cradled Mascareño. Mascareño dos Mil tried to foul Ultimo Guerrero, but Ultimo Guerrero blocked the foul attempt and ended up cradling Mascareño dos Mil to get the win. Just an okay match. I didn't think it was horrible. I just thought it was okay. There's only so much you could do with Mascareño dos Mil at this point. I mean, I think the last time he probably should have been in a CML main event was probably like 2000 or 1999, honestly. But, it's 20 years later and he's still in main events. Mind-boggling. I think it kind of tells you what CML has no problem headlining a show with anyone. I think they've proven it with Bestia del Ring, Máscara Año 2000, and Diamante Azul. At the same time, it also shows how little regard they have to like building up. I mean, imagine if CML headlined with better workers. It'd be a lot more amazing. But like I said, they're very traditional, very old school. I don't think they're going to change at any point. I know a lot of people were asking me why they didn't main event with Virus and Metalico, and I didn't respond or anything, but my first reaction was like, you guys realize these guys are mid-card guys that never were pushed as main eventers. That was my first thought. My second thought was this feud actually started maybe like 2-3 weeks prior to the show being announced. So there was really no build up to it. Came out of nowhere. Nobody expected the retirement stipulation to be added. I think at one point that was a match that was planned to be on a Sunday show, had it been a hair match. But when they went with the retirement, they just felt they had to move it on to the Juicio Final show. But I thought the show overall was pretty good. The last 3 matches, they weren't like, if you don't want to watch them, you don't have to. I mean, honestly, especially the tag match, the tag title match, and the main event, those were really easily the worst matches on the card. I thought 5 out of the 7 matches were good. I would say the Virus Metalico match was a match of the year candidate. I think Amapola Cajo was one of the better women's matches of the year. But yeah, Virus versus Metalico, definitely watch that. What else happened during the post match for the main event? Ultimo Guerrero talked about how he kind of suspected something was going to happen in the match with the Dinamitas getting involved. And then Mascareño 2000 talked about how he had this plan. It was a two-tiered plan. The first plan was that he was going to have Disturbio as a second. And the second plan was that his nephews were going to run in and make the save for him. And he did not expect this to happen. He was surprised to see that this did not end up working to his favor. And, I think a lot of people were a little surprised by that. As far as so many security guards getting involved, but I'm not surprised he didn't win just because he was wrestling Ultimo Guerrero. So you kind of expected that to happen anyways. Yeah, I'm curious to see if they're going to be able to continue doing the monthly big shows. I think they will. I think for June they're probably going to have the finals of the Copa Dinastia, and then they'll probably add something else. Soberano Jr. challenged Negro Casas to a hair match. To a master versus hair match. I don't think that's gonna happen. I would be shocked. They did do the title match on a Sunday show, but I just can't see that match happening in as a big. I just think that would actually be a little bit bigger than that. I don't really see it being I wouldn't be shocked if it is, but I would think they're probably gonna focus on Copa Dinastia and maybe they have so many titles. I think they could probably do a title match on there with another one of the titles. I think there's a possibility of a Dinamitas versus Guerreros match on that show. There's right there you have 3 possible matches. But like I said, I don't really know. I think that's very questionable that CML can pull that off. They could pull it off, but like I said, they don't really put in the time to really plan this stuff out. And then there's so many things that are going on that they could do so much more, and you never know with CML. I mean, they could really do something huge, or they could do something that you're just this is a promotion that could actually plan out or tease an LA Park Rouge match and end up with a Diamante Azul versus Bestia del Ring match. You know what I mean? That's what you end up sometimes with CMLL. But I think you just have to enjoy the stuff that's actually pretty good. And this time, Juicio Final I thought was pretty good. What else is going on with CML and AAA? Well, AAA, I think next podcast will be Verano Escándalo, a recap of that. I was actually going to hold off on doing this podcast until like the following after Verano Escándalo. But then I realized Verano Escándalo is actually not happening this week, and it's actually happened on the 16th. So I decided to do the Juicio Final. Then we'll do something else for Verano Escándalo. So I think that's about it for this week. Check us out on LuchaWorld.com. Get all the updates there. The website crashed, I think, a couple of days ago. I don't think it'll crash for another couple of weeks. It'll probably crash again at some point, but it's not an issue. If you want to check out the other past podcast episodes, you could go to LuchaWorld.podbean.com. You have the entire archive of the podcast, also a couple of the Slam and Stand podcasts. I'm still probably going to put up all the Slam and Stand on there, because we did a lot of good stuff with like we had Judo Jean LaBelle on as a guest, and we did talk about lucha on those shows in the past. But check the LuchaWorld.podbean.com website. Also, you could download the app and you could get the shows on there. I don't know what's going on with iTunes as far as whether or not that's even going to be an option at some point. I think they said they're just splitting it up to just being podcasts, music, and then TV, just splitting it up into 3 apps. So I don't think there's going to be an issue with that. But there's so many ways you could find it. I found out I'm on the podcast is on iHeartRadio too. Didn't know about that. I knew I was on Stitcher and Downcast and all those other things. So you can find all the podcasts everywhere. Also, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/LuchaWorld. I'm going to start cutting down on a few things as far as other stuff I do as far as wrestling goes, to focus more on LuchaWorld and my other website, Retro Wrestling. And so that also includes the Patreon page. I'm going to start doing a little more with that. So expect that to be something to be updated a little more frequently in the coming weeks. So check that out. And I think that's about it for this week. Want to thank everyone for listening, and we will talk to you guys again next time.